Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, criminal court, and other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. I have switched back to GoDaddy as my website. And you can find my books on Amazon, and they are on audio as well. Now I have a return guest. I have Theo Chino, and he has billing asset recovery. And we're going to talk about that because we're going to dive into the murky waters of the legal invoices, the kind that make your stomach turn and make you want to scrum it when they hit your inbox. And Theo provides billing investigation and recovery support for people who feel like they've been bled dry by their representation, or were they representation at all? Theo, before we start, your business is going to blow up after this one. It's going to get big because this is going everywhere. Let's get the big elephant out of the room, and we need to give the listeners a go, no-go disclaimer. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Everybody, everything you hear on this podcast is for edutainment purposes only. We hope we're going to make you laugh a little bit. I know you're probably not going through a great time, and that's why you're watching this podcast. You wouldn't be motivated to watch this unless you've been through something traumatic. But we want to make you laugh a little bit, and we want to maybe provide you with some food for thought. But nothing in this podcast is legal advice. Nothing in this podcast is good legal advice because, in my personal belief, there is no such thing as good legal advice. I am not licensed to practice law in my state, and I am here talking to you about matters that would maybe require a sixth grade education at best, and maybe a rudimentary understanding of the rules of Simon Says or any other playground kids game. Billing investigation. You all can do it yourselves. Maybe you're a little weak right now. Maybe you're distracted. Maybe you're scared. Maybe you feel like you're too dumb. Maybe all kinds of things. I feel this way every single day about myself. I'm too dumb. I can't do it. I'm too weak. I'm too distracted. Oh, I'm too tired. I can't do it. It's too hard. This is not hard, folks. You can do this yourselves, but if you need the support, that's why I'm here, just to help you along and figure out, what did you pay all that money for? Because if you're somebody who goes, you know what, let me look at my old bills that I got from my family or probate law attorney or from my plumber or from my mechanic,
Hmm.
and you look at that bill and you're like, those are such good times. That was so worth it. I should call them up and pay them some extra money because they did such a good job. Believe me, there are people out there like that. There are
Oh,
situations that have happened where they're like, you know what? They handle this so well. I'd love to have one of those on the show because those are so few and far between, but they exist. Most of the time, it's
yes.
the opposite, right?
Right, right,
Horrific, terrible. And you're sitting there wondering at the end of the day, what in the world was all that about? And
right.
after the dust settles, here we are to help you kind of go through the wreckage, the carnage. I'm teeing it up for you.
The carnage, and it's bad. So, I know people get intimidated and they get scared by even just looking at legal bills. And they see Latin phrases and 100-page invoices and they freeze up and you just want to scrum it. But you've told me before that auditing a bill isn't exactly rocket science. But I think sometimes it is because it stresses me out looking at it.
Well, that's the thing too. So, I personally had a really tough time looking at my own things pertaining to my own matters. What happens is most people have been through some kind of court-induced trauma. Maybe we
Hmm.
just came up with a new term,
Yeah.
CIT, court-induced trauma. Most people have been through that, cannot go through their bill without experiencing massive psychological pain. Anybody who hasn't been through it is going to hear this and go, that's ridiculous. That's stupid. How can a bill cause you pain? Trust me,
Oh,
this is not just a bill, right? This is probably a record. And this is where you and I did our first episode, I think, where we said there bills are the breadcrumbs to their crimes, right?
Yes.
And when you're looking at these bills, there's so much that these bills trigger. You actually may be the worst person in the world to go through your own bills just because of the fact that it triggers all these bad memories, and then you get stuck going down these rabbit holes, and you'll never get done with what you should be doing, which is just looking and saying, why do I have to pay so much? Why was this so expensive?
Right.
Right. So we
Right.
boil this down to a really simple, easy process, designed an algorithm that analyzes legal bills. We don't need any sensitive information. We don't need your bank accounts. We don't need your social security numbers. We don't need any sensitive information. We don't need your medical records. We don't need anything. All we need is that bill, and you can redact it as much as you want. I always tell
Mm.
people, take, if your attorneys were unprofessional enough to mention your children's names in the bills, then please redact those. That's the
Right.
first sign that they weren't
Right.
very professional, right?
Right. Right.
Redact everything, send them over. We'll process it. We're going to show you an example today of how simple this process is, right?
Hmm.
And how affordable this service is. I will start off saying that I personally, one of my biggest victories that I had was I had a mother who was in fear for her own life and her child's life. She had to flee the state that she's from, and she was being called back into court over a matter of $6,000
Oh.
by her former attorney. The bridge was burned. She didn't need this guy anymore. She wouldn't want him in her case anymore because they didn't do a good job for her.
Hmm.
And it might as well have been $6 million because she didn't have it. And the biggest concern was she was going to have to go back into that county court where the person she's afraid of knows she will be.
Right.
So she's talking to me and she's like, what am I going to do? Oh my gosh, I'm afraid for my life. I don't have this money. And I said, okay, do you have enough money to put down the deposit on my services? She said, yes. I said, you're going to have to trust me. But after we get through the first phase of the services and the deposit is eaten up, I'm going to ask you a really important question. I'm going to say, do you want your money back? So we do what we do, and I analyze the bill, and about 80% of it, and I will never tell you what to do or what not to do. That's not my
Hmm.
place. I'm not God. I'm not your
Hmm.
father or mother, right? I'm not your big brother, right? I
Oh,
will just
I think
show
you're my
you.
big brother.
Well, you look young enough to be my little sister for sure, right? So we, you, you really pull it off. You're good. So I always tell people like, they're like, what should I do? And I'm like, I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life. I'm not here to give you advice.
Hmm.
Sign your kids up for soccer or jujitsu. Maybe you should. But
Yeah.
what I will do is I'll run this report and I'll run through it with you and do what I call an education session where you start looking at the report and you start seeing parts of the bill that need to be explained. That's it. Because if you read the rules of professional conduct in your state, which by the way, you don't need to be a lawyer to do,
Right.
all you have to do is be able to read. And you can read these rules of professional conduct. And in most of the states, they mirror the American Bar Association rules. And one of them says, the bills need to be reasonable. I'm paraphrasing,
Hmm.
don't quote me exactly, but the bills need to be reasonable. They don't even say to whom, but think about it. If the bill's reasonable to you as the customer and you pay it, isn't that a beautiful world? Everybody's
Hmm.
always thinking about court battles and fights and disagreements. If you can get your client to say, yes, I think this bill's reasonable and pay it, that's the win.
Right.
But part of these rules is it says that they have to explain their bills when
Hmm.
asked about them, right?
Hmm.
So, when has an attorney ever sat down and explained a bill with their client? So in
Never.
this, right? I mean, you have that happen to you? Did that
No,
happen?
never. I
Okay.
got the bill in the mail and the mailbox scared the hell out of me. And then I like looked at it like, oh, I didn't know that was $310, things like that.
Yes. Mailbox trauma episode. Another acronym for you, the MTE, right? Yeah. I mean, afraid of the mail. This is a real thing for people who've been through any kind of litigation, right?
Right.
So now you're looking at this bill and you don't even know what it says. It probably freezes your brain up. It gets you all messed up. So this woman had these bills from this former attorney, and she's like, "What should I do?" I said, "Don't worry, I'll look at it for you." When I looked, the report said about 80% of the bill needed to be explained. It didn't say eight. She was like, "So 80% of this is fraud? I should get an 80% refund?" And I said, "Not necessarily."
Mm,
She said, "What do you mean, not necessarily?" I said, "Well, if the attorney sits down with you and explains these items, not the whole bill, by the way,
right.
20% of the bill seemed like it was fine and didn't need explaining because the bill itself did enough explanation." I said, "If they sit down with you and they explain this 80% of the bill to you and you find it to be reasonable afterwards, guess what? It's a win-win for everybody."
Mhm.
Except for, the attorney has to waste time explaining their bill to you.
And how much
Oh,
is that going to
no.
cost?
Well, I love what you just said because guess what? One of the rules as of today, you can read it for yourself and tell me if I'm wrong. I love interactions from the audience. Is they're not allowed to charge you when there are questions about the bills,
Right. I agree.
right? So
Right.
people are afraid to ask about their bill because they're afraid their attorney is going to charge them more for asking about the bill and explaining the bill. And this is against the rules. This is part of their job that should be included with their services. And if their contract says otherwise, well, that could be a part of the contract that needs to be looked at a little bit more carefully by someone who knows what they're doing, who
Hmm.
understands the laws and the statutes and the codes and the rules on the books and compares that to what's in the contract.
Right.
So after we look, the bill was 80%, I guess there were 80%, there were anomalies that amounted to about 80% of the charges on the bill, and they needed to be explained. So she went to this attorney who she was afraid was going to drag her back into court. And she said, "Hey, you know what? We need to have a billing rectification conference to explain these bills to me because about 80% of the bill needs to be explained."
Hmm.
He said, "I don't agree, but just pay me 20% of the remaining amount." So he did agree.
Huh.
Even though he says, "I don't agree," he's like, "Just give me $1,200.
Oh,
She got an 80% discount for just saying that 80% of the bill needed to be explained. Now, this attorney is really not the worst family law practitioner I have seen or heard of. He
hmm.
actually tried to do somewhat of a decent job. He tried to warn this poor lady that she's going into a meat grinder where the only rules are there are no rules. That's basically what he was telling her. That, there was nothing they could do to force her ex to do this and that. That's what he was telling her, according to what
Hmm.
she's telling me, right? So again,
Right.
this is not real legal advice. It's not good legal advice because there is no such thing. But he was basically just trying to stall and kind of put up some kind of shield or defense for her while she was trying to get through whatever she's getting through with her ex. And she got an 80% discount on the remaining amount. Now, when she looks at the amount she already paid him, she's like, "Doesn't he technically owe me 16 grand because I paid him $20,000? And this 80% pertains the whole bill." I'm like, "Okay, that's a whole nother thing to consider."
Right.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but how far do you want to go down this pipe here, right? So that's one person. They got an 80% discount. Another person talked to me and got a basic education. And after she got the education session, I asked her, I
Hmm.
said, "Do you want your money back?" And she goes, "Yes." I go, "From whom? From me?" She goes, "No, not from you." She's like, "If I wish I had more money, I'd give you more money." I love this education session and this report. This gives me the confidence to go back and ask questions. And then when she asked the question, she got an 80% discount. So that's it right there. I would say, listen, if you did not like the report or the education you received, it's okay. Tell me. And
Mhm.
I will do my very best to get you whatever portion of your deposit back that you think is fair as quickly as possible. The other part is I did an education session with another person, and she showed me the check. It was over $12,000 refund that she got from someone that she paid to do absolutely nothing, right? And they were
Right.
holding on to her money, and she got her money back. So there you go.
Right.
There's billing asset recovery, or BAR, investigation in a nutshell. What questions do you have before
I
we
think
go through
that's
our example?
Oh, I think it's awesome because all of this is about accountability, and you're teaching people to look for all these red flags that I talk about on my podcast, Slam the Gavel, and these bundled tasks, the lack of specificity. I can't even talk today, and the failure to explain their work.
Right. You use some
And
really neat terms there. Lack of
yes,
specificity and bundled. Wow. Block billing.
billing, yes. Yeah, which I don't understand because when I did look at my bill and there was like 1.5 hours for a conference, and I'm like, 1.5 hour, when did that happen? Like,
Hmm. So let's go through some stuff here and let's look. And so here we go. This first image is just a little marketing for barinvestigation.com, which stands for Billing Asset Recovery. That's the
mhm.
acronym. There's a neat little ad. He looks scared while she's showing him her bills.
Right, the
Kind of
junk
looks like
fees.
yeah, looks like the lady I helped. And then look at this.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this may be actually easier to understand in that format.
Hmm.
And look at that. Most of it came from block billing, vagueness, or lack of specificity. And you may know somebody who had these charges and has had a billing investigation done on them.
Hmm.
Here's some examples, some deep dives into the bill.
Hmm.
But look at this, roughly two out of every $3 billed is flagged for potential reduction due to block billing, which isn't necessarily legal or even against the rules, but makes it difficult to ascertain what was actually billed for what. When they do block billing, it really needs to be explained thoroughly. Vagueness and lack of specificity. If you look there, until these items are explained,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
the burden is on them. I mean, this is a matter of style now. This is a matter of preference. Some
Hmm.
people would be too embarrassed to ask for their money back when they get you go out to dinner and you kind of had like this horrible fajita happen to me on Saturday night.
Oh,
And I
no.
already started eating it, and it was like, oh my goodness, this steak tastes like rubber. It was
Oh,
horrible. But I was embarrassed to say anything really. I was like, well, I already ate like a decent part of it. And I just kind of realized like if it wasn't for the peppers and the onions, this would be absolutely horrible.
oh.
But the waitress came by and said, is everything okay? And I was kind of too embarrassed to say anything because I already ate a bunch of it, right?
Hmm.
Now, but in this case, if you're getting a bill from someone who is licensed to practice law, who is only licensed to charge you to practice law, they're not a therapist, they're not a psychologist, they're not a life coach, unless they are, and they also bill separately for that.
Hmm.
If they do not do their duty and explain the bill, you may feel like 100% reduction is in order. until that item is explained thoroughly.
I wish they would send a cover sheet saying that if you have any questions about your bill, we're welcome to take your phone call at blah blah blah.
Oh, they do sometimes though. That cover sheet is called the fee agreement. And they don't say it that nice like the way you just said it. What I've seen is fee agreements or contracts, and you might want to look up how many years you can go back on a contract in your state. The contract would say something like, if you don't complain about this bill within 14 days of when it was mailed
Oh.
out, it's too late to complain. Now, if when you are signing up with that attorney,
Hmm.
if you were in your right mind and you were emotionally stable, right? Which, I mean, you think about it, right? You want to see someone completely at their worst, either freezing up or acting like an angry gorilla at the zoo when you took his last banana away.
Hmm.
Grab someone's kids and tell them you may never see them again. You'll see the worst. You will not see a person who can think straight. But if you were a person who could think straight and you read that in the contract and it said, wait a minute, 14 days from when you mail the bill out, I have to complain about it. Otherwise, it's too late and I can't do anything about it. Sure, I'm going to sign that. Really, would you?
No, no.
Right? But instead, you're so terrified with the loss of never seeing your children again. Or in probate cases, people are so destroyed because they just lost a loved one.
Hmm.
And they're just emotionally destroyed. They can't think straight. They're like, here you go. Will you take care of it, Mr. or Ms. Lawyer? Oh,
Uh-huh.
thank you. And you're just signing in your blood. Please take care of it. You're not reading stuff like that. But if you look and study, and I'm not saying what the right answer is here, but if you study consumer protection laws, and if you look, is you have 14 days to complain about a bill, 14 days from when I mail the bill out to you. Is that in line with federal consumer protection laws? I'm not saying it is or it isn't, because they'll
Hmm.
say you signed it, it's fair. It's like, you know what? No tag backs. Nope, Simon didn't say. This is like a playground game now,
Right.
right? I'm in the safe zone, right?
Yes.
And then you go, oh, you got me. Did they though?
Uh-huh.
That's something you should look into, right? And it's pretty funny because I bet you if you called 10 different attorneys, you might get 10 different answers
Hmm.
just on that topic alone.
Right,
So
right.
here we are looking at things like block billing. And most of it is just really, like they say, drafted response. Drafted response to whom? For what? Spent 3 hours drafting a motion. Great. You spent 3 hours drafting. Yeah. Okay. Well, what was it? Uh, oh yeah, it was that thing. Okay, you didn't spend 3 hours thinking about it. You spent 3 hours drafting it, right? Yeah. Well, we have a way to uncover whether or not they were truly drafting a document for 3 hours.
Mm.
They should have said, you know, right? Well, then they'll say, no, no, no. I was writing it all down on my notepad. I have to write it all down first, and then I have to think about it while I'm in the shower, and then I have to sing it 10 times, and then I have to write it down again. Then I have to use whiteout to make my corrections, and then I type it up. It's like, you do, huh? Do you still have those notes that you scribbled?
Yeah, those templates.
Right. And here's the other thing, right? Were templates used? And if they were, why did it take you 3 hours? And weren't templates used? Well, you know what? If you didn't use a template, well, that's probably why it took you 3 hours. One of my favorites, though, is, scanned in copies, filed things. It's you charge $500 an hour for administrative tasks. Well, it says it's okay for me to do that in my fee agreement. And if that's the way they treat their clients, I
Mm-hmm.
think every potential new client of theirs should be thoroughly warned about the way they treat their clients
Right.
before they sign up with them. So
Oh,
you can talk about your experiences now. What have you seen after looking at an analysis that was provided to you?
right. It was, just very unsettling to say the least. And we did reach out earlier last year with no response after looking at all this money that I put on charge cards, even $8,000
Yeah.
before Christmas.
So that's a very interesting topic. They
Hmm.
were contacted, let's just call them Carnage and Bad, right?
Oh, yes, the carnage
Carnage
was
and Bad were contacted and they were requested to provide documentation. And what was their response?
nothing.
Nothing. And
Right.
then they were, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to even say, even the opposing attorney, when I would provide like something reasonable, like, can we settle this? I call him tortoiseshell, but no response because he's that arrogant. He feels he doesn't have to answer you despite not doing his CLEs, but that's another topic.
Well, that is that is going to be another fun podcast. CLEs, continuing legal education. Would you hire? They say, do you have a law degree? Did you go to law school? It's like, hey, have you done your recent training that actually verifies whether or not you've been keeping up with your legal knowledge? Are you charging people for legal advice, but you haven't been keeping up with your CLEs, which, by the way, is nowadays as easy as signing up for one, letting the webinar play, and then going, yeah, yeah, yeah at the end and punching up that you did it. That's what most of them do nowadays because they're too busy to sit down and carve out a little time for their continuing legal education. But going back to this whole thing, you
Mhm.
received no response when you asked for documentation and some time to sit down and go over what you were exactly charged for.
Right.
Do you feel like this is reasonable? The chart now because of this non-action, this non-response. Do you feel like these charges are reasonable?
They're not reasonable.
I mean, that's how you feel, right? And that's one
Right.
side of the equation. And if you look at the rules of professional conduct or the ABA rules, which I'm not telling you what they say, but the word reasonable is in there, but I can't find, it doesn't say who is the determiner of what is and what isn't reasonable. But one party in this contract feels like the charges are unreasonable. If you're in sales,
Mhm.
whether the sale was about to be made, whether the sale was made, whether the job was done and the bill was paid or not, a lot of times a big part of the job is explaining to the client or customer why this bill is reasonable if
Right.
they ask. Maybe sometimes if they don't ask. If you really want to be a really good salesperson, a really good business owner, a really good service provider, you should preempt any questions by
Hmm.
offering to sit down and discuss the billing before it's paid. And a lot of people would be listening to this and going, why would they do that? I actually know attorneys who actually would love to sit down and go over the history of the case with their client before their client pays the final bill.
Hmm.
Those attorneys are very few and far between. Good luck finding someone that honest and ethical in their billing. What I usually find is if there's any question about the bill, they automatically start discounting their bill rather than having to go back and rehash why they charge what they charge.
Right.
And again, this isn't legal advice. This is just me keeping score based off of what I've seen. And I do this day in and day out for people that seek out education and analysis from me, right? Not legal advice, but just education analysis. And then I see how these things play out between them and their current or former attorneys. Sometimes, again, before they even sign up,
Mm-hmm.
they actually get a little education from me in regard to the billing. And then they ask some really good questions. And they ask these lawyers that they're thinking about retaining and giving that 5,000 or 10,000 or $15,000 retainer. Hey, when this happens in regard to your bill, what happens here? Why does your fee agreement say this? Can we take that out? Because I don't really feel like that's fair to me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really feel like that aligns with all of the consumer protection laws. And it's really interesting to see what the attorney would say.
Right.
So this is all valuable information. It's just about being an educated consumer. It doesn't necessarily have to do with just attorneys and probate or family law court. It doesn't have to do with that. It's just about being an educated consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's probably this is the other thing that happens a lot of times when people come to me for billing investigation, they're probably dealing with something that is super heavy and
Mm-hmm.
super hard. And it's not the bills, even though the bills are making the whole situation completely intolerable. And they come to me and they're just destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So I say, you know what? Let's just take this. Let us handle this for you. Let's give you that education, that analysis. And then after we look at it, you tell me what you feel like doing. And they always try to ask me like, well, what should I do? And I'm like, I can't tell you that, right? But
Right.
we can go over possibilities. One move is to do nothing. Now you know, and maybe you could tell other people, hey, if you ever go through this, don't just pay the bill without looking at it, right? Or maybe you just move on with your life and close that chapter. Another thing is they go, can I sue them? I'm like, technically anyone can sue anyone
Mm-hmm.
for anything. It doesn't mean you're going to have success. And
Right.
lawsuits, in my opinion, are kind of like sieges back in the medieval times. Did you know that you always felt bad for the people who were trapped inside the city that were being besieged?
Mm-hmm.
The besiegers were actually a lot of times worse off than the people inside the city. People inside the city were all stocked up, and they're okay. And anytime they were getting attacked, they had the advantage kind of fending off the attackers. The attackers actually had the worst time. So lawsuits are kind of like sieges back in medieval times. Nobody wins. Just horrible,
No, no. I
right?
mean, I even won a Superior Court case in Pennsylvania on a pension fund. Like, first of all, that should never have happened to begin with. He could have disclosed what the pension fund would be worth. But no, I had to pay an attorney, and he cut me a break. Instead of charging me 5,000, he said, "You're being railroaded. I'll charge you 2,500." I said, "That's fair." And he said he believed the judge was wrong. And we proceeded and we won. However, you cannot extract payment out of some of these very crooked opposing attorneys, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's also an interesting thing because if when everything's going on, and again, you should consult an attorney or do your own research. You don't have to hire an attorney to form a legal opinion, but that is
Mhm.
one thing you can do is consult a licensed attorney. If two people have a marital estate and one of them is spending a dollar on a lawyer, but it turns out that the dollar they spent should not have been spent because that lawyer was billing either recklessly, wantonly, or even willfully in a fraudulent manner, half of that dollar may belong to someone else while this whole matter is pending. So
Mhm.
yes, but it was interesting to hear you talk about how you actually had an attorney who talked to you about the final amount due
Mm-hmm.
and was actually trying to get you to acknowledge that what they were charging you was reasonable. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
There's some good ones out there that at least aren't bad. Maybe they're not good, but maybe they're
Right.
not actively
Right.
bad.
Well, like my Supreme Court attorney who helped me after my heart attack when I won the second win at the Superior Court of Pennsylvania. That was 406 WDA 2017. Thank God she was there. And she said, there's things missing out of your docket. It's like, I haven't had time to look. It's just been crazy, crazy. And so she was fair and she said, I don't know how this is going to turn out when she goes to argue before the child support judge, right? She said, this is what I would like to see done, this, that, and the other thing. And she was able to extract the W-2 from the ex because never provided down in domestic relations at the basement of the Erie County Courthouse. Okay, so no big deal. But we get this crazy order back where the judge reduced the child support from 890 something down to $106 a month. And the arrears, which were, um, oh, what was it? I think the arrears were at 15,000 and she was so gracious. The judge was so gracious. She took it back down to 11,000 because remember, she had increased my arrears from 11,000 to 15. So she just takes it back down to 11. So, but she said I could pay $10 a month on the arrears, which really ticked off the ex. So was that a victory? I guess. And my attorney was so good, there was 1,400 sitting in the till. And I said, I don't know, what should we do with that money? She said, let's just sit and wait for a year just to see if there's any more litigation. There wasn't, thank God. And she gave me a check back for 1,400. Now that's a fair attorney.
If you felt good about it, and that's the most important thing as a consumer, as a customer,
Right,
then
right.
we're not going to argue anymore. Like this
No.
is one of those where sometimes people are fooled. I have one person that I know who loves their attorney, but all they really were was a support pet to them. When they were about to go into court, their attorney said, "Hey, I told you I don't do court." It's like,
How's that
what?
happen?
They charged him $45,000, but what they really did was not really good legal representation. But what they did was they played the next level up because there's another layer to the game in family court. And it's the same game everywhere you go. It
Right,
doesn't
right,
matter where you go. You could be on the mats in a wrestling match. You could be in a hockey game. You could be somewhere at a business dealing in your county. There's
right,
another layer. It's the who's who game, part of the game.
right.
And this attorney actually did some strategic wrangling with guardian ad litems, which were more friendly to her. You see, and this
Hmm.
had nothing to do with the best interest of the children at this point. This was all about her bolstering her client's, the father, her client's position in the litigation and the domestic relations division through personal connections and friendships of hers. It had nothing to do with who the better parent was or who the worst parent was. It had nothing to do with the children or what would be best for them. It was all about him paying her to make the right connections and curry the right favors.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's the real game.
It
And
is.
she knew how to play that. And this is why he felt like, oh, great. I loved paying this person. But he didn't pay her for legal advice. That's the thing.
Huh.
He paid her for connection advice. And you can't really put that down on a bill, can you?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
So instead, while he was calling her and crying about his ex filing on him and all this other stuff, she was playing the phone and charging him money,
Mm.
which again is not legal. But here's the thing: he feels like it was fair and he was happy to pay her. What am I supposed to say? What are you going to say about that? I think he was bamboozled, but at the same time, what he was really paying for was what really counts in the domestic relations division, which is the connections
Right.
and getting hooked in and juiced in with the right favors.
Right.
Because you said about your judge, she was gracious enough to, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
right? Sometimes the gods of Olympus are not so cruel to us mere mortals,
Oh,
right?
she was extremely cruel and vengeful, and she's not on the bench anymore.
Ooh, well, probably replaced by somebody even worse, believe it or not. You don't think it's possible, but wait, just wait. This is the thing, too. A lot of times when people clap and cheer because someone's taken off the bench, someone's disbarred, and they're like,
Hmm.
yeah, they got him. Usually they're being taken down by someone even worse than they are. And that's super scary to think about.
Hmm.
Super scary, right? So I guess, we can, if you don't mind, I'm just going to put up the logo
Oh, sure.
for our services again. I like this one. This is a cartoon image of the woman, the mother that was truly afraid for her life.
Aw.
I don't know her. I don't know her children. I don't know her ex. I don't know. I know some of the characters and the firms involved in the case, but I think she was truly afraid for her life. And this was her attorney going, uh-oh, and giving her, yeah, I think it was something, like a little over $1,200 that she ended up owing him. And then they worked out payment terms too. So don't just pay that bill. Stop and look at it. If you're smart enough to do this, and you are, I can't encourage people enough who are listening to this. You don't need me. You don't. But sometimes paying someone who's an expert, and by expert, I mean someone who does this day in and day out and has built up a lot of experience and
Hmm.
who has tools
Hmm.
such as an algorithm that can quickly analyze bills. Well,
Right.
this may be worth it to you to pay for a little education and a little guidance on options rather than just paying a bill and saying, well, I'm just going to pay this and turn this chapter in my life. And maybe that is really the best answer for some people, maybe for a lot of people. But
Hmm.
um, I think that at least 1 million Americans have been overcharged at least $50 by their plumber, by their mechanic, by their lawyer, by someone. And we're willing to help them get their $50 back. And there's a way to also, if the business doesn't want to do their duty, which is explain their bill when asked about it, there's a
Hmm.
way when they have to engage us and pay us, there's a way that we can help alleviate the weight of the costs of our services as well too. So we're always willing to look into finding a way where the victim or potential victim is not hurt or is hurt as least as possible when seeking recovery
Hmm.
and made as whole as possible. So the real question, everybody listening here, is again, you have a million things to worry about, a million things to think about, but this is one of them that you don't necessarily have to think about. If you did give someone an extra $50 and they didn't earn it, should you let them keep it? Maybe. What if it was $500? Should you let them keep it? Maybe. What if it was $5,000? Should you just give it to them just because? Maybe. What if it's 50,000? Boy, those maybe start getting smaller and smaller, right?
Hmm.
What if you paid $500,000 to be run around in circles and treated with disrespect and ignored and blown off when you ask some very good questions? Should you just roll over and pay them that money so that they can turn around and do it to somebody else again later on? Maybe. But I think there's a lot of people, most people would not say maybe to that last question. Most people would say what, Maryann?
You know,
Would, yeah, I mean, hell
it,
no. It was what a lot of
right.
people would say.
No, I mean, the thing is, when I got to know you and you were doing this, I was stressed out even looking at these bills when we were talking. So you had me send them to you, and it's just I didn't want to even look at it, and I didn't even. It's just the I hate to say trauma of going through this and looking at these bills again.
Correct. It is traumatizing. And that's probably one of the reasons why it may be worth looking into doing a billing asset recovery or bar investigation. One of the things we found too is, Maryann, is when we do the education and we go through and with the client's permission, we will we will record the session where we go over the analysis of the bills. There will be something that go, wait a minute, they weren't in court that day. I remember they didn't show up. They charged me for that. And then there'll be another thing like, wait a minute, that phone call never happened. My attorney never talked to them. And all of a sudden, all these other things are going to be popped up and discovered, which may actually, because of this just simple investigation into whether or not the billing was fair, may
Mhm.
uncover other causes of action against individuals involved in litigation. It may trigger things like bar complaints, bar beefs, ARDC complaints. It may trigger FTC complaints. It may trigger lawsuits to be filed against certain people because you're kind of going through the wreckage, the carnage
Yes.
of the history of your case while doing this. So sometimes by accident, by going through the bill, doing an intake, there is now a clear timeline being created in what happened in this case. And now things become much clearer. And you go, oh, that's what happened then. That's what they did there. So this is another possible side benefit where no legal advice is given, right? There's
Right.
nothing like that. It's just really going through the chronology of the bill, covering the analysis, and going, oh, but wait a minute. That wasn't even something that should have been argued. Wait a minute, they did all this preparation, but it really, I never even saw the product of their preparation for this
Mm-mm.
trial that never happened. I
Right.
should go back and see everything they prepared since I paid for it.
Right.
And then there are conversations that are had with third party parasites, as you call them, guardians ad litem,
Oh, yes.
where they say, oh, reviewed email. Well, what was it? Oh, well, I can't show you that. You can't show me it. Why? Because it doesn't exist and you're charging me for something that doesn't exist? No. Well, why then? Because, again, this is not legal advice. It's not good legal advice. But if the guardian ad litem is supposed to be the eyes and ears of the court, and if the guardian ad litem on their bill is saying they read an email or they looked at a document, if all parties involved in the case are not allowed to see it, is this tantamount to or similar to in some way ex parte communications? Is it? I'm just
Yeah.
asking. I'm not saying it is, right?
Sounds like it.
So, I mean, it very well could sound like it to many people, and I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but these are the things that people, when they start going through their bills, are like, wait a minute, this guardian ad litem charged 45 minutes for this call to my lawyer, who would bill me for thinking about billing me. And now all of a sudden, I don't see that phone call on my lawyer's bill, and she charged for that 45-minute call. What do we call that, boys and girls?
It's not like
Fraud.
right, right. And it could be double dipping because what if the attorney also charged for that call?
Well,
Right?
so that may or may not be appropriate, right? And that's the thing. But when the phone calls match up and the durations of the phone calls match perfectly, At least they got their story straight. Now, were they
Right.
ripping you off? Maybe. Were they doing a good job and really spending 100% of that phone call talking about your case in probate or family court? Maybe, right? We don't know. But if they at least got their story straight on their corresponding bills, there are many, many times where our billing asset recovery investigation reveals that they can't even keep their combined story straight.
No.
And now there's a gap that needs to be explained there. And this is not high minded Supreme Court justice level legal thinking. This is simply, why did you say you were on a 45-minute phone call and this person doesn't have a record of it? Why did you say you spent an hour on the phone and this person says they spent 30 minutes on the phone with you? Why don't these numbers match up? Can you tell me,
Hmm.
please? Oh, I wrote it down wrong. Okay. Well,
Oh,
again, this is where it's like, okay, well, I must have misremembered. I'm sorry.
oh
Whoopsie.
God.
Well, and
Right?
it's like fine. People make mistakes, right? You could be forgiving and say, "I get it. Whoopsie, you made a mistake. Where else did you make a mistake? Oh, what is this? Some kind of, crucifixion now? Is this some sort of witch hunt?" And it's like, "No, but we just caught you making a mistake per your own words. You misremembered. What else
Right.
did you misremember? Nothing. Well, let's go through it. Oh, here's another one. You said nothing, and now here's another one. Whoopsie, I guess you caught me again. It's like now I
Right.
caught you with your hands in the cookie jar twice. How many more
Right.
times were your hands in the cookie jar when they didn't belong in there without asking?
Right. And I know
So,
I told you, oh, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, you know what? You're the client, and it's your cookie jar. And if your attorney says, "May I?" and you say, "Sure," but just grab one, and you catch them grabbing two, is that okay? Well, when you're afraid you'll never see your kids again, you're probably not going to say anything. You're like, "Sure,
And you,
have another cookie."
right. And you won't care because you want to see your kids.
Right. But after it's all over, can you go back and go, "You know what? My cookie jar is almost empty. There's just some crumbs left. What happened to all my cookies? I told you could eat two. I had 25 cookies in that jar. Why am I left with crumbs?" But you were
Right.
going to say something. I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, well, remember me telling you about that one letter I got from the attorney 2 weeks before Christmas saying, uh, we need $8,000 and you need to pay it by X amount of date because we do like working with you, but we need $8,000 collected or we're going to have to drop you. And I freaked out 2 weeks before Christmas. And I didn't even get to see my kids on Christmas if that isn't bad
Oh,
enough. So I took out a charge card and I did tell the first attorney because I had two of them, right? Oh my God. Talk about a torpedoed case. But
mhm.
I said, hey, I'm trying, I'm getting this credit card. He says, don't worry, I trust you. I don't know what he charged me for that email, but I got it and I ran in there like about a week before Christmas and I swiped $8,000 on a charge card. Thanks a lot, Carnage and Bad.
Right. And you see, this podcast is not the time or the place to really reveal real identities of people who do stuff like this,
Right.
right? Squeezing you during the Christmas, probably the first Christmas you weren't able to see your children in 10 years
Right.
plus or whatever it was, right? And
Right.
again, is it their fault that things didn't work out in your family? No. I mean, did they cause it? No. But when they are when they take a client on and this client is going through severe emotional distress. I mean,
Mhm.
and some people have argued, like Nate Monroe, give him a shout out. You guys
Yay,
should check
Nate.
him out as well. Yeah. And
Hmm.
what is, I can't remember Nate's service again, but you know what? If you're looking into ADA,
Paladin.
Paladin, if you're looking into ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act issues in regard to, let's say, family or probate court or any other legal proceedings, um, reach out to Nate Monroe. We can provide that information to you as well. But the next thing is the ADA. When you're not able to see your children for the first Christmas in forever, you are, according to Nate, he explained this to me, you may be temporarily disabled. And now you have these people asking you for a last minute emergency $8,000 or they're going to drop you. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna play it from their side. Hey, you know what? We can't work for free here. We have an office, we have rent, we have marketing, we have people to pay, we have telephones to keep going, we have paper we need to buy, we need copiers. Copier broke down again. I need to fix a copier. We need ink for our pens. We need computers. We need this and that. And we need, of course, oh my goodness, we need to have our own insurance, malpractice insurance. We need to take time and do these CLEs. I had all these years of law school that I had to pay for, right? Pile it all up, right? And
Oh,
not
and
only
the
that,
and the Hummer payment. You can't forget that, the
got to
Hummer
have the
payment.
Hummer payment, right? But
Yeah.
here's the other part. And the suits, you forgot about the suits and the
Uh,
briefcases and the fancy shoes or whatever else it takes to convince people that you are somebody, and this is the last most important part. You're somebody super special. And people are graced to have you spend your time on them. And that's why they needed $8,000. But you were just one, your family was just a few links of sausage in a gigantic sausage factory called the family court.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they were like, hey, listen, let's 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 just churn these through. But there was never once a thought, never a standard of care to say, are they doing okay? Are they going to be all right? My goodness, this must be horribly stressful for her. First Christmas, never seeing your children? Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Give us $8,000. Now let's play it from your side of the board. I just told you their side of the board, why they needed that $8,000. Let's flip it around again. Well, how are you feeling? Well, what this feels like to you, it may have felt like, oh my gosh, if I don't pay this $8,000, I will never see my children again.
Right.
And what is that called? That's
Extortion.
called, yeah, extortion, right? And I think I've described what have I ever described on your show what I learned was going on in Brazil back in like I think it was the early 2000s, late 90s, the scam nappings.
No.
Yeah, Brazil's not the only country this happened in, but in Brazil, there was this thing going on. It was kind of a rash for a while until people caught on to it. There'd be a guy sitting at, a place, a bar, or whatever, and somebody incredibly beautiful walks up to them, and this guy's just in love, and he's thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is going to be the mother of my children. Oh my goodness, this is." I was just in the right place at the right time, and he's getting just bombed with love and beauty and everything. And someone sneaks his phone away. And most people don't have a password on their phone. And while this person is in love and all the chemicals are flowing in their brain and other parts of their body, their family members are getting text messages saying, "Hey, we've got Ricardo. We've got whatever their name is. And you know what? You're never going to see him again unless you get to this ATM and you give this person this much money within an hour." While this other person's keeping them busy, he has no idea this is going on. Their family's freaking out, thinking they'll never see their family member again, and cleaning out their bank account at the ATM and giving some stranger the money. And next thing you know, here's poor Ricardo getting his phone slid back underneath his elbow or whatever, underneath his armpit on the bar, and this beautiful person just disappears, and he's like, "That was strange. Where did you go?"
Mhm.
And he's like, "Wow." And then he checks his phone messages, and he's like, "What?" And they're calling him like crazy. And they're like, "Are you alive?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm alive." He's like, "I just met the most beautiful woman." And they're like, "We thought you were going to we were never
Oh,
going to see you again." And he's like, "What? No, that's crazy. I was just at the bar with da da da. And I met, Linda, which means
yeah.
beautiful in Portuguese." And all of a sudden, they're like, and then he's looking at the messages and he realizes, uh-oh, there was a scam napping perpetrated on my family. Now, what is this really ugly, raw, very unlicensed, unprofessional episode look like to you, Maryann?
It's all a fraud and extortion and
Right. I
I
mean, isn't that what you kind of felt like that Christmas?
right, right.
You were like that family that was getting those
Yes,
texts,
yes.
and I mean, you couldn't even think straight to
No,
go,
I,
wait,
I couldn't.
$8,000
Right.
seems like a lot. What
Oh,
did they
with a high
do
interest rate.
with the interest rate? Don't forget the interest, right?
Right.
So there you were. Now that's your side of the chessboard. You were the victim of a scam napping. Now, were you for real? I'm not saying you were, right? But that's the way you felt at the time. You couldn't see straight. You
No.
were terrified. Worse than being terrified for your life, you were terrified for people you loved that you
Right.
couldn't protect, right? And they had you. Now, again, flip the chessboard back over. That's ludicrous. We were fighting for her. We were fighting for her children. We can't work for free. Flip the chessboard back around again. You just told me you're going to stop fighting for me and my children if I don't give you $8,000. Flip the
Mhm.
chessboard back around. Well, yeah. I mean, why would we care about you and your family if you don't give us 8,000? Oops. There it is, right? We
Right.
don't care about you or your children unless you give us $8,000. And you know what? Here's the best part. After you give them the $8,000, I hate to say this, but I still don't think they cared about you or your children,
No.
right?
No.
But would they go in there and pretend like they did in the domestic relations division? Some people would call it a pirate ship where the only rules are there are no rules.
Right. Exactly. I'm
I'm
so
sorry to
glad.
be so raw,
Well,
but
it
there you
is
go.
the way, this is how it goes, and people need to know the playbook here. So I'm really glad you came on and shared this horrible unfairness, injustice, sorry. And
That's okay.
how can people reach you if they have any questions?
I'm glad you asked. So on the screen, you're still seeing our poster, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, Theo, what is that number they can reach you at?
Okay. You can try me anytime, day or night at 708 659 1990. 708 659 1990. Great year. And feel free to call in, mention this podcast. Don't forget that you actually saw this, that you got my number through this podcast. And we'll see about maybe some affiliate discounts on our services as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. This is very helpful. You helped me a lot. So don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and share. Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Theo Chino. I totally appreciate all this knowledge here. Thank you. You're a big help. Thank you.
You are a warrior goddess. Keep
Thank
going.
you.
Ciao, Bella.
Ciao, bello.